Hi, welcome to our next complex numbers video. We're going to start talking about surds. A surd is a number that can be written in the form of a plus or minus b times the square root of c. For example, 5 plus 4 times square root of 6 is written in this form. 3 subtract the square root of 2 is also written in this form. Just the square root of 2 is written in this form. You'd never write it in the long way, but it is written in that form. 7 times the square root of 6, again, you'd never write it in this form, but it is written in that form as well. And even 3 plus the square root of 2, all divided by 3 minus the square root of 2, can be converted into this form, and we'll show you in the next video on how to do that. Now, just one thing to point out. When I write the square root of 3, we actually should put the little 2 there. The 2 means square root. But we don't. We're quite often lazy. If I write the cube root of 10, I do have to put the 3 there. But for square root, I can't be bothered, and I often don't. So technically, we should be writing a plus or minus b times the nth root of c. Here's some basic rules for surds. First rule, if I square root a number and I multiply it by the square root of the same number, I get the number 8. So the square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is just 5. Our second rule, if I square root a number and multiply it by the square root of another number, it's the same as the square root of a and b times together. So the square root of 5 times the square root of 6 is really just the same as the square root of 5 times 6, which is the square root of 30. And our third rule, the square root of a number divided by the square root of another number is simply the square root of the two numbers divided by each other. So if I have the square root of 40 and I divide it by the square root of 8, it's really the same as the square root of 40 divided by 8, and 40 divided by 8 is 5, so it's the same as the square root of 5. Right, let's get into some examples and show you these rules in action. Let's simplify the square root of 48. We know 48 can be made up of 16 times 3. Now, I went through all my factors of 48, and I picked 16 because I know I can square root 16. I could have also picked 4, but I'm looking for the biggest number possible. So, now looking at our second rule, if the square root of 16 times 3 can be broken up into the square root of 16 times the square root of 3. Now, I know the square root of 16 is 4, so this whole thing can simplify down to 4 times the square root of 3, which is in the third form we want, 0 plus 4 times the square root of 3. I wouldn't write it in this form. I'd leave it as 4 square root 3. Now, please just note one thing is before we move on, 4 times the square root of 3 is not the same as the fourth root of 3. And you need to know the difference. And if you don't, go back and explore what's going on there. All right, example 2. Let's multiply these two surds. Just treat it like a quadratic. So let's go 5 times 1 is 5. 1 times negative square root 3 is negative 1 times square root 3. 5 times square root of 3 is plus 5 times square root 3. And square root 3 times negative square root 3 is negative square root 3 square root 3. Right, we'll write down 5. We have minus 1 square root 3 plus 5 square root 3, which is 4 square root 3. And remember our key rule here, square root 3 times square root 3 is just 3. So we have minus 3. And then if we tidy it up, 5 minus 3 is 2, plus 4 times the square root of 3. And that's written in the form we want. All right, our last example, let's simplify 20 times the square root of 70 divided by 4 times the square root of 10. So let's divide 20 by 4 first to get 5. And then let's look at our third rule and realize the square root of 70 divided by the square root of 10 really is just the square root of 70 over 10. 70 over 10 is just 7. And so we've got 5 times the square root of 7, which we'd write it in this. We wouldn't actually write it in that form, but it can be written in that form. So much for watching.